So good evening, everyone. We are
Good
back.
evening,
We are back to the
Julio.
study of heaven and hell, and we are going to start reading about Adelaide Marguerite Goss,
Right.
a spirit, and that is going to tell us about her story, a spirit from Normandy. Okay, so Soraida, are you going to read for us?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Adelaide Marguerite goes. Okay, Adelaide Marguerite was a poor, humble maid from Normandy, near Hayfair. All 11 years of age, she went to work for some wealthy ranchers in her area. Some years later, the Seine flooded and carried off and drowned all their animals. Other misfortunes followed, and the girl's employers fell into poverty. Adelaide identified with them in their misfortune, stifled the voice of a selfless, and listening only to her generous heart, convinced them to accept 500 francs she had saved up. She then continued to work for them without pay. After her employers died, she devoted herself to their daughter, a penniless widow. She toiled in the fields and took her gain to the house. She got married and joined her efforts with those of her husband in order to support the poor woman, whom she still called her mistress. Her sublime self-denial continued for nearly a half a century. The Society of Emulation of Rouen did not forget this woman, so worthy of respect and admiration. She awarded her an honorary medal and some financial compensation. The Masonic lodges of Haven added to this tribute and awarded her a small sum intended for her welfare. Finally, the town administration also provided her in a discreet way, sparing her any susceptibility. An attack of palsy took this beneficent being from the earth suddenly and painlessly. The final respects paid to her memory was simple yet decent. The municipal secretary led the funeral procession. Parisian Society, December 27, 1861. Evocation. We pray to Almighty God to allow the spirit of Marguerite Gross to communicate with us. Yes, God has kindly granted me such a grace. We consider ourselves fortunate to be able to express our admiration for your conduct during your earthly existence, and we hope that your self-denial has earned you your recompense. Yes, God has been good and merciful toward this servant. Everything I did and which seems praiseworthy to you was completely natural. For our instruction, could you tell us the cause behind your humble condition while on earth? For 2 successive existences, I occupied a high-level position. It was easy for me to practice the good without sacrifice because I was rich. However, it seemed that I was evolving too slowly, and that is why I asked to return in a more humble condition, in which I would have to struggle with privation. I prepared myself for a long time. God upheld my courage, and so I was able to reach my intended goal, thanks to the spiritual assistance he gave me. Have you seen your former employers? Please tell us what your position is in relation to them, and if you still consider yourself as their subordinate. Yes, I have seen them. They were present when I arrived here. I must humbly confess that they considered me superior to themselves. Did you have any particular reason for being so fond of them rather than of someone else? No obligatory reason. I could have achieved my purposes elsewhere. However, I chose them in order to pay off a debt of gratitude I felt I owed them. In a former life, they had been kind toward me, and had rendered me service. What do you think your future holds? I hope to reincarnate on a world where pain is unknown. You might think me quite presumptuous, but I am speaking to you from the readiness of my character. Furthermore, I submit myself to God's will. We thank you for having answered our evocation. We have no doubt that God will give you his blessings. Thank you. May God also bless you. And when you die, may you all experience the pure bliss that has been granted to me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, of the stories we've been reading recently, this one is it's a lot lighter than all the stories. You see an individual, a spirit, telling us her story, or we see it from others as well, the narrative of what this Miss Goss did. And we start from the position. So the position she was in, she was a servant at a small castle. There are a few words there that are not properly translated. So it's a small castle, not ranchers, but it is the city of Harfleur or Honfleur, which is the same thing in English. They're both the same spellings. This is a Viking word that means the lower horn. Has nothing to do with the word flare, which is flower in French. Actually, it's a Viking word. And this is at the end, and this is important so that we can understand what happened there. This is at the estuary of the Seine in Normandy, in northwest France. And it's an area that not as much nowadays, but was prone to inundations in the past. And in one of those, when it actually took the entire area and all the possessions of her master and her mistress, and they became destitute. And she started assisting them with whatever means that she had. And we see that even afterwards, she got married, and you have now a second income from the husband, and still they took care of the couple that used to be the owners of the land, and in some ways, they're her employers. We see that the community recognized her character by looking at two different institutions of that place that actually bestowed upon her not only honors, but found a way of supporting her in her old years, and give her some stipend, at least for her meager needs, whatever they were. And then she eventually passed away, as all of us in the physicality will pass away, just the physicality, of course, from a vascular incident, a vascular issue in her brain. It's not actually cerebral palsy. She actually had a brain stroke, which is a little different. But it was painless. It wasn't something that was dragged by many years, as we have this idea there. So you see a life, what is he there? It's a life dedicated to others, and a death that was relatively painless and quick. And then we look at her communication. So she's evoked, and she gives a communication, and you see in her words an absolute serenity of character. She speaks of her previous employers, that they were there to receive her when she passed away. They're in the spiritual realm. So we see also that they believe her to be very superior to both of them, and yet she gives the impression with her words that she does not consider herself like that she was grateful for the opportunity of serving them, and that she actually asked to not only to have this life of servitude, this life of difficulty, because she realized she was not progressing fast enough, let's say, but also she wanted to be with them because she believed, perceived herself to have a debt of gratitude towards them because they had provided her some service in a past life. But she doesn't give us the impression that she owed them. Let's say, oh, I insulted, I injured, I damaged their property in a past life. No, she just says service. So it's very mild. We're not giving any more information on that. But you see that it's a spirit so serene, not perfect, mind you, but serene, tranquil, and a spirit that has full idea, awareness of where it is and what has to be done. And I think, putting aside the details of the story and this and that, I think the most important point in this lesson is the idea that we can do things to improve our world, and it doesn't have to involve trying to save humanity. That we can do whatever it is that we can in whatever environment we are, with whichever means we have. Sometimes when we start studying Spiritism, we all go through this, and some to a larger extent than others. We have this idea that we can't do charity, we cannot do anything that is good because we excuse ourselves from doing it simply because of lack of means or lack of opportunities or lack of financial, but particularly financial means. And see here a humble servant with very little means. She continued on with her life and even took upon her to take care of her once rich employers. We see in this particular case a dedication. Then that dedication was probably very difficult for her because it's not that she was rich or even with means. And she also had to work, and she had two elderly individuals to take care of. And yet she did. And how many individuals out there in this world, if we could be able to see them, how many would we see under these conditions that quietly, very quietly, are assisting others, whether the others is just one person or many? But it's not multitudes. They are not being advertised by the media. They don't give lectures online or otherwise. They don't have foundations. They do not have their names on an award in a hospital or a school or anything, and yet they are assisting. They are assisting, and with whatever means they have, they are making their immediate surroundings, if not better, if not happier, at least less miserable. I believe this is a lesson for us all, that there's so much each and every one of us can do, that we don't have to look for extra means, that we don't have to look for, well, especially financial means, that we don't have to wait for opportunities to save humanity. We can save one individual, or we can at least console or bring some happiness to one individual. I would say it's important to remember in this lesson chapter 25 of the Gospel, seek and you shall find, where we have that lesson that says, look up to the birds in the sky. They do not save, they do not make provisions. God provides for them.
Mm.
God takes care of them because they are taking care of their own needs, their immediate needs. She was taking care of the needs. The immediate needs were actually those two elderly individuals. And she probably did a little bit more than that, since she was even honored by the city, by the municipality. We are looking at someone who's giving us the important lesson that we are capable of extending a hand, no matter how small that hand is, or how many that hand is going to assist, shake. But what's important is that we do our part. And at the very end, look at what she says, that she did not ask for anything for herself when she was questioned about what she would need or what she would want to do. She simply said that she would like to reincarnate in a world without misery, without so much unhappiness. You see an individual who's already detaching itself as a spirit from all the earthly possessions, from all the stress of our lives that are so filled with mundane points, mundane unnecessary desires, unnecessary wants that are so intense that we forget our own needs, the need to evolve, the need to smile, the need to assist, the need to be in a communal relationship with our surroundings. We're very good at being selfish, all of us. But we're not very good at being communal, of thinking of a community. The community may be just a neighbor next door. Here I mean literally a neighbor, the person who lives next door. And I think we should see this lesson as a wake-up call. It's telling us, first of all, that we can assist, that the assistance does not have to be great. And the other thing is, if it is true charity, let us remind all of us, let's remind ourselves that if it's true charity, one hand will never know what the other one is doing. Whatever she did because she thought it was the best thing to do. We can tell this from the narrative, from her words, from the serenity. It's almost as if we can capture that serenity in her voice, even though we are not hearing her. This is the idea, so that when we do something for the next person, for the neighbor, now not necessarily neighbor here in the figurative sense, for anyone that is next to us, not necessarily physically, whenever we do, we should do because of the goodness of our hearts, because we see a need and we realize that we can fulfill it, whatever need that is, however small it is, and not do so in the sense of gaining something from the action. In other words, not doing charity, making sure that there is an eye looking at us, there is someone observing us do it. But we do it because it is a need and we have the solution, the answer for it. And if not the solution or the answer, at least the amelioration, at least we will give some relief, which is already a part of it. So it may be a small lesson compared to the previous one, which is much longer text. It may even sound that it was simple example, but I think we have a lot more to learn from it. In its simplicity, it strikes us, because it shows us how much more we still have to go and change in our own lives, to have this detachment, to see in another individual who's not a blood relative, a person in need, a brother or sister in need. Okay? Anyone has a question or would like to say something?
It's I think it's interesting when she talks about her previous incarnations as a wealthy person, right? Relates to what we just studied on the Spirit's book. The wealthy, right? How much good they can do. So she had 2 wealthy incarnations, and she thought she didn't do enough, showing that our conscience in the end is what evaluates what we have done with our wealthy, right? How much we use it to the benefit of others or to the benefit of ourselves. In her case, she wanted to come in a very humble position because she thought she could be more useful to others from a humbler position, right?
Yes, it's a good point, Ron. And it's interesting because she doesn't have guilt when she says that. She just wants to progress. It's a desire, it's a yearning. So she had the opportunity, she probably did. We don't have details about it. But when she says that, we don't sense guilt when she mentions that. She's just a spirit who's so aware of the situation. She wanted to progress more. And this is why she comes and she asks to come as in a humbler position than what she used to have. Yeah.
Julio, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry. This is Luisa.
Hello, Lisa. Go
Hi.
ahead.
What if she had money in her previous incarnations, right? And she even says that she did some good with it. She just thought that it was not enough, from what I understood, with her money, let's say, with her possessions, right?
Yes.
I find it interesting. You have money, you have a lot of money, you can do a lot of good things, even, help someone in the condition of the person who she worked for, and but nevertheless, she thought that coming as a humble person, she would do much more than before. Do you understand my point?
Sorry, I heard you, but I don't understand.
You can understand?
I mean, what is that? Is you have a statement or?
No, it's like a question.
Uh-huh.
Couldn't you have money and do as much for someone or for people as if you did not have money? Do you see?
I think I know where you're going. If I'm going to answer, if it's not the right one, we'll try again. Okay.
Thank you.
I think reincarnation, when reincarnations in which we are wealthy, and I'm just gonna say wealthy. I'm not gonna say a lot of money because we don't really know she had a lot of money. She was wealthy. Okay, so there's a difference between wealthy and being, well, Jeff Bezos wealthy or Bill Gates wealthy. When you have $110 billion and more, we lose standards for comparison. So she had means. All right, let's put it this way. And when we have a reincarnation, when we have means, when we have wealth, when we have a small fortune to larger ones, What happens is that, let us imagine a spirit who has already received, who has already gained enough awareness of its own path, all right? And you put a spirit in a situation like that. The spirit will do the best thing that is available to himself or herself during a reincarnation in terms of assisting others. However, there is a negative side to wealth. It shields you from the difficulties of the world of life. In general, everything is in general. There's always going to be an exception, okay? You can be, for instance, wealthy and be in a situation Stephen Hawking was, okay? So that will be an exception. So, but as a rule, wealth shields you from the problems of the material, the physical world. So the spirit in that situation is capable of doing a lot of good to many individuals, but the spirit itself may feel that because there is no experience of the hardships, of the difficulties, of the impositions of life in the physical realm, the spirit may feel that it has not accomplished enough for itself. So back to Gus, she probably realized that being 2 reincarnations in a row in a situation of being a person of means, somewhat wealthy, she was capable of doing a lot of good to others, but for herself, she was shielded from the difficulties of the world.
Got it.
This is why she probably asked for a humbler position, because then she would truly have a test for her difficulties, through her difficulties, a test that would actually allow her to experience the hardships, and that would show to her if she had truly understood those hardships, or if she was just being wealthy because she had enough that she could part from without actually depriving herself of anything. Was that what you were going for, Luisa?
Exactly. That was it.
Oh,
I
good.
understood much better now. Thanks.
Right. You're welcome. I think, Zoraida, you had a question together with Luisa at the beginning, or somebody else?
Yeah. What I was just going to say
Go ahead.
is that at the end, I love what she says at the end. And she says, "Thank you. May God also bless you. And may you experience a pure bliss that has been granted to me." Even with all that she had gone through, she's actually looking at it as a bliss of learning that she went through what she had to go through, and yet she's so humble and understanding that what she went through was needed, because she learned just what we have learned in the spirit book that we just studied, those 3 questions, right? When you have a lot and you don't share what happens at the end. So now she comes and she says everything she went through, she calls it a bliss in order to get to where she had gone through. But understand that she knew what she did, she learned, she grew, and now, she goes with this beautiful thing in her heart that she did good, and that's what we have to see. We go through changes in life, not very good, and suffering. We think it's oh my God, it's so bad. Here we have an 11-year-old, but we're talking about naturally the time of the story. It's a century ago, so it's just that I'm looking at her last wordings when she says how she's wishing us to go through the experience as bliss as what she had gone through. So we have to look at that and take it in consideration. and understand that when you have, and God blesses you with abundance of whatever, and you misuse it, we're gonna pay back. Whether it's a trial, atonement, whatever you call it, we call it atonement and trial, and yet come out victorious at the end. It's one accomplishment for her, and she's blessed absolutely for what she has gone through.
Yeah, and thank you, Sarayda. And you see here, Sarayda, why words are less important than the context. We may say, oh, it's a trial. Is it an atonement? Is it an expiation? We can debate this until to our heart's content. And the point is, it does not matter because she wanted it. She decided that she needed a proof for herself by going through hardships, or at least going through the physical world in a condition where she would not be shielded from the difficulties.
Yeah.
So, a pessimist will call this a trial, an expiation. And then, and somebody else, oh, no, this is just an atonement. Yeah. You don't know. Okay. For us, even just use the word atonement, we would have to know all her past lives. And then we would be measuring whatever she did according to our yardstick. And we might be completely wrong. So it is the context that is important. And in the context, the Spirit itself decided that it needed a harsher proof. It wasn't a harsher trial or challenge. Proof that Spirit had indeed reached a point of seeing the other as she would see, as it was seeing itself, or as she in the reincarnation was seeing herself. She basically took care of the employers, of the previous employers, as if they were one of her own. Wow. And this is what is important. And whatever it is that we may say, society, whichever honor society may bestow upon her, it doesn't matter. What matters is what that Spirit thinks of its own actions. Good point.
Julio, can you hear me? It's Mariana.
Yes, go ahead.
So is it correct to say that each one of us, we're going to experience wealth and poverty through our incarnations, or it's not something that we can say in a way?
I would say that we have already experienced it, particularly the wealth. Because with wealth comes pride, arrogance, vanity, everything that is negative. And because arrogance, pride, vanity is the absence of love for ourselves and for others, the concept of universal love. So there is the absence of love. So we are feeling these empty places in our makeup, in our essence, with universal love. I would say that we definitely experienced wealth way before we applied for poverty. Okay.
Nice. Okay.
But from now on, not necessarily. I think it's a great question. I would say not necessarily. As the world today is much different than it was 1,000 years ago.
Yep.
So if you look at, and I'm talking 1,000 years ago because then it becomes so much more extreme that it's easier for us to grasp. So think about it. When we talk about the Middle Ages and the height of the Middle Ages, you had a division of labor and a division of wealth that was very marked. It didn't really matter if you were a freeman, a servant, a serf. It really did not matter. Even if you lived in the castle, you were either malnourished, prone to every possible disease on the planet, and dying of the simplest and most horrible conditions, because there was no treatment and there was also no hygiene, nothing, and you didn't even have enough food.
Yeah.
And then if you were on the rich side, and the divisions, like I said, there's no middle ground there, right? You were also experiencing all the vicissitudes of the world, because medical science was not very well developed. It was more like shamans and tricksters than anything else. But then you have at least the food. So it was a very marked difference. Nowadays, you have a lot more individuals in the middle ground. So to be able to progress, we don't have to get to the extremes so much or as often.
Yeah.
Perhaps today we can have 2, 3 reincarnations that are very well used for our purposes, for our development, moral and intellectual, just being, let's say, what we call today middle class.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay.
Are we good?
Okay, we're good.
All right. Please, all right, I'll continue.
Yes. Claire River. Via? Yeah. Claire was a 10-year-old girl, the daughter of a family of laborers in the south of France. At the age of 4, she became severely ill. During her short life, she was never heard to complain or show any sign of impatience. And even though she had no education, she consoled her stricken family by commenting on the future life and the happiness that she would find there. She died in September of 1862 after 4 days of torture and convulsions, during which she never stopped praying to God. I am not afraid to die, she said, because a happy life is reserved for me afterward. She said to her weeping father, "Take comfort. I will come to visit you. I feel my hour is near. And when it arrives, I'll know and warn you." And indeed, when the fatal moment was upon her, she called her family and said, "I have only 5 minutes left. Give me your hands." And she expired as she had announced. Afterward, a rapping spirit began visiting the river's home. It disrupted everything. It struck the table as if it had a club. It shook clothes and the draperies and rattled dinerware. Under Claire's form, the spirit appeared to her younger sister, who was only 5 years old. According to this child, her sister often appeared to her, and such apparitions caused her to exclaim joyfully, "But see how pretty Claire is." Evocation of Claire River. I'm next to you and ready to respond. Although you were so young, where did you get such elevated ideas about the future life? From the short amount of time I had to spend on your planet, and from my previous incarnation. I was a medium both when I left the earth that time and when I came back among you. It was a predestination. I sensed and saw what I spoke about. How could a child of your age not complain at all during your 4 years of suffering? Because my physical suffering was controlled by a greater power, that of my guardian angel, whom I saw constantly beside me. He was able to mitigate what I experienced. He rendered my willpower stronger than the suffering. How did you foresee the moment of your death? My guardian angel told it to me. He never deceives me. You told your father, "Take comfort, and I will come to visit you." But how do you explain the fact that, although animated by these good sentiments toward your parents, you have returned to trouble them by causing such disturbances in their home? I obviously have a trial, or rather a mission, to fulfill. If I have returned to see my parents, do you think it is for nothing? The noises and disturbances, the struggles resulting from my presence, are a warning. I am aided by other spirits who cause the disturbances for a reason, just as I have my reasons for appearing to my little sister. Thanks to us, many will be convinced. My parents have had to experience this trial. It will soon pass, but not before having convinced a lot of incarnate spirits. So you aren't personally causing the disturbances? I'm held by other spirits who are serving in the trial reserved for my parents. Then how do you explain the fact that your little sister has recognized you if you are not the one who is causing the manifestations? She has seen only me. She has second sight for the time being, and this will not be the last time that my presence will comfort and encourage her. Why were you affected by so many infirmities at such a young age? I had previous wrongs to expiate. In a prior existence, I abused my health as well as the outstanding position I enjoyed. Thus God said to me, you have enjoyed too much and without restraint. Therefore, you shall suffer like manner. You have been proud, so you shall be humble. You have been vain about your beauty, and thus you shall fall from it. Instead of vanity, you shall struggle to acquire charity and goodness. I fulfilled God's will, and my guardian angel helped me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So changing gears a little bit. This is a lot denser than the previous one. There's a lot of information there, and we'll see if we can tackle these in an efficient way. So now we go to a 10-year-old. We move from an 11-year-old to a 10-year-old. We have this 10-year-old who's been suffering since age 4, right? And the first thing that strikes us, if we move to the next page, is that we see that all this suffering seems to us to be showing more of an adult personality than actually that of a child. We see from her sentences, I'm not afraid to die. There is a happy life reserved for me later. That she's warning them that her time is near. And you see from her experiences that her speech is much less of a child's than of an adult. So you're looking at a spirit manifesting itself through the body of a child, but a spirit that has kept some remembrance of its life, its previous life, and a spirit that is not fully integrated in that body of a child, in the sense that is not behaving as much as a child. Because we are not talking about a superior spirit here. We are not talking about a spirit that is morally advanced. So in the first few years of our lives, we bounce back and forth between the two realms. We have this ability because our physicality our spirit has not completely associated and identified itself with the physicality, with the physical body. She died even before that identification became complete, that association became complete. So we see that spirit in these, let's say, moments of clarity was addressing the family as the spirit much more than it was doing so as a child, as the child of that family, or as a sister, the older sister, for instance. She then passes away rather peacefully, in a very, very probably dramatic way for the family, for the relatives. And then she begins a process of calling attention of the family to herself. Her younger sister sees her, In the same way that she was going back and forth between the two realms, at that age, the younger sister at 5 was also doing it and could perceive Clara, could perceive her as a child. And then when we look at the evocation, she comes in and she tells us that she had a mission to fulfill. A mission here, be very careful with the word, it's how she expresses herself, all right? We're not talking about a mission like a missionary. She had something to do to grow, to improve, to develop herself. So she came, she had a short life, but that was a consequence of the way that she behaved in a past life, where she abused her condition and particularly her health. So there was a reason. We are not given more details about what she did, but we have her word that she had done something to cause all of these consequences that she had to face in her last lifetime here in the physical realm. One interesting thing that we see is that she wanted to call the attention of the family. And in order to do so, she resorted to rapping, to produce raps, to produce noises. So these are physical phenomena which require a medium of physical phenomena to be nearby. Nearby does not mean necessarily in the house. It can be in the next house, the next home. She found, but she herself is probably a little above this type. So she actually asked for the assistance of spirits that had pending issues with the members of the family. Spirits that were still ignorant enough next to the family members, so around the house, let's put it this way, to use the prepositions we have in English, we have to think about them as being with us, actually, right? We are the ones who divide into physical and spiritual realm, but there is only one creation. So they're with us. And she makes use of them. She has them to do the bidding, the job. These are the ones who creating the wrappings, the movement of materials, the rattling, and so on. And the sister sees her because the sister at this point has only an identification with her. The sister perhaps is not aware of the other spirits simply because she's at our level or below, or she's in the condition of a child. The only thing that she has an identification with is the parting sister. So that's the one that she sees. So there's quite a lot of things there, right? We see a spirit that can request the assistance of, let's put it mildly here, lower spirits to perform physical phenomena, to call the attention of the family. We see a spirit that wants to communicate and is using for that purpose these lower spirits, but these lower spirits are already in the house. She does not recruit them from somewhere else and come and bring them there. It's already there. These are spirits associated with the members of the family. We don't know who to whom in particular, and it doesn't matter to the story. What matters is for us to understand the dynamics of it. Since we all have our obsessors, or we all have, not necessarily obsessors, but spirits we have injured, the spirits we have offended, they are around us, they can be recruited to assist in such a manner. This recruitment is not it's not something that is mandatory, it's obligatory, all right? You have to understand that they are going to have the opportunity to do so, but they still have their free will to accept or not. And they actually, in this case, did, and they produced Okay, all the effects, the physical effects that were actually most likely the cause for them to evoke her at a seance. Anyone has any questions or comments?
Yes, it's Mariana. I have two questions, Julio.
Go ahead.
The first one, so she's behaving like obsessor for her family. Can I say that? And she's using like an excuse of a mission or something that her parents needs to have this trial, having her in their house. I don't know if I got the point of this action that she's taking with other spirits. And the second question is, if she was 10 years old, is there a way that we know is there any medium that could see her? Would she present herself as a child or some other kind of outer physical appearance?
So let's start with the easiest one, the second part, the second
Thank
question.
you.
She shows up as herself in her last reincarnation because that is what her sister would be able to remember and identify with, and as well as her parents.
Okay.
So she's showing herself as a little boy, a little girl. She's showing herself as the girl, the 10-year-old girl that died, because that's what the parents remember, and that's what the sister remembers and can identify with, right? For any spirit to show themselves, for spirits to show themselves, what they used to be in 2 or 3 reincarnations before, is it possible? Yes, it is possible. But then we would have to have been with them in those reincarnations and be capable of having that recollection. Otherwise, they will look like strangers to us. Okay. So, for instance, if my father were to communicate with us today, he will show up as he was when I've last remembered him, as my father. Because if he shows up as somebody else, I might not be able, being in the physical world, I might not be able to recall my past. And maybe we were together 2 reincarnations ago in different, in let's say, swapped roles. He was my son and not the other way around. But I won't be able to remember that from the physical realm. And then I would not recognize. So the whole purpose of the recognition would be defeated. So she's showing herself as a 10-year-old girl. For the first question, I would say right now, let us not be so harsh. She does not give us any indication of possession so far. She's being perhaps inconvenient in the way that she's calling attention to the family, but we are not given so far any information as to the family's faith. They may have not been Christians at all. Not even talking about Spiritists. Remember, this is 1862. Spiritism is at the very beginning. So they might not have been, not even Christians, like I said. So it would have been very difficult if she had not been so forceful in terms of all the nuisance that she created. Perhaps they would have never looked for a seance, for a medium. And not only that, someone who is trustworthy, someone who's serious about the job, right? So perhaps this was the way at the time and for that family to provoke them so much that they would try to find help and the correct help.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Hi, Julio. It's me, Luisa. I think it looks like she wanted to kind of prove to her parents that about the spiritual world, like, you know, there is what she said before, you know, she disincarnated, like, okay, you see, it's true, I'm here, you have to believe, something like that, isn't it?
Yes, but we have to be very careful. It's possible that there is a lesson that is different from the other world, the idea of the other world. We have not read the last part, but I can tell you we can try to do that over the weekend, for next week.
I don't know.
And we'll be a little surprised because there are other things beside telling people about the other realm. Perhaps it's a message of encouragement, or perhaps it's sending someone off with a flea in their ear. In other words, you're telling someone off. Perhaps her idea is, hey, dad, hey, mom, what you're doing is wrong. You're not raising my little sister properly, or you're being mean to people in the neighborhood. We don't know that. So it might be that her intention is to call just to call the attention of the family first, from what we have read so far. I'm being careful not to spoil the end. That's why. Okay. But what you're saying is one of the possibilities, is one of the hypotheses that we have to consider.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for not spoiling.
Yeah, come on, Julio.
Well, you just have to read one more paragraph at home.
I know.
We won't have time to finish today and discuss it. That's why I don't want to start. So if anyone has any other questions about this part that we have read, I know I'm not dropping the other shoe. Okay, in science, what we say, this is just drop the other shoe, basically, right? You know the story about the shoe, right? The man goes to a hotel room and he's in bed and he's a light sleeper. And at one point, he hears from the floor above that someone probably went to bed, and then he hears this thud, this sound like a shoe dropping, like when you're in bed and you just kick off your shoes. And then he goes, boom. He hears one sound, so he's now waiting for the second one. And because he never hears it, he's not capable of sleeping the entire night because he's always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Poor man. That's how it's gonna be.
So I'm not dropping the other shoe here. I know that.
Oh
so
my
I'll keep you in
goodness.
suspense like a cliffhanger until next week.
Well, maybe the shoe fell on the bed.
Yeah.
Someone is thinking. Someone is hypothesizing. That's good.
It fell
The
on
other
the
shoe is in
bed.
the bed, on the bed.
That's right. He threw it off. He fell in the bed and then threw the shoe on the bed.
Maybe the person has only one leg.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a
another
good
one.
one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Okay, so, but the point of this is actually the idea that sometimes we say things and we don't finish our thoughts. So we don't drop the other shoe. Okay?
Oh, I see.
But in this
Okay,
case, I don't want to
it.
drop it because otherwise I will spoil
You spoil the ending. Okay.
spoil the ending. But I think it's nice that everybody's thinking of these possibilities because it means that when we are reading, we are not biasing ourselves. We are creating hypotheses.
Right.
But until we finish the story, we won't be able to know which one is the correct one.
Okay.
Okay.
Good enough.
All right. So I think we can stop here if there are no more questions. And who's going to say the prayer, the closing prayer for us? Carol? To do that? Can you do it? João Carol is muted. Carol, you can unmute yourself by just tapping the space bar and holding it down while you speak. Because I think João is having difficulty unmuting you.
Yeah, I was trying and I cannot. Carol, we cannot hear you. So I don't know what's going on. We cannot hear you.
Well, okay, it's probably halted. It's probably frozen. So I can do it. It's okay.
All right.
Thank you, Carol. Sorry about it. All right. So at the end of our studies tonight, Once again, we elevate our thoughts to the spiritual realm. And we ask for serenity, especially serenity, for all of us, not only the ones here, but all of us here on planet Earth. Not only for the incarnate beings, but also for the discarnate ones as well. So that we may not give ourselves to commotion, to desperation. We do not, so that we are very careful not to listen, to heed, to sensationalism, to distrusting words, mistrusting words, that actually create more chaos than they provide consolation or information. We ask for those who are in dire needs to be blessed by their spiritual guardians. We ask for more understanding, not just tolerance, a true understanding of one another's needs, that we may not only recognize them, but do something to alleviate, if not everything, at least to provide for basic needs. We ask for the protection, special protection, for those who are in this life the Saint Josephs of the physical world, the ones that produce everything we eat and drink, that are so often forgotten in our prayers. Those who have to wake up at ungodly hours in the morning so that we may have sustenance, we may have food in our refrigerators, in our pantries. For those who transport that food, for those who produce or in some way or another manipulate it. May they be blessed at these times of difficulties, because they are human beings as well, and as such are also facing the insecurities, the tension, and the difficult moments that all of us are experiencing. In our urban lives, we forgot to think about the rural areas, about how they provide for us on a regular basis. And they too deserve the respect of our prayers, the sincerity of our hearts, and the thanks from each and every one of us. This does not mean that we forget the others who are doing so much at these times of difficulties. But let us also remember those who produce the food we eat, because as I said, they are rather often forgotten in our prayers. We ask for peace, for tranquility, that we may ride all these chaotic moments in our lives and come out of them at the end more evolved, more morally evolved. Because the intellectuality we can pick up at any moment, but it's at times like this that we can truly address our moral side. Let us not miss the opportunities of assisting ourselves at these times and of assisting others as well. Like in the example of Miss Goss that we just read today, let us think small. It is by thinking small, but at multiple foci, at multiple places, that we will change this world. It's by changing in small amounts, but everywhere, that the rippling effect will eventually cover the face of the earth and make both realms around this planet of discarnate and incarnate beings alike a better place to be, a planet of regeneration, a planet where the difficulties will be solved by a social approach, by understanding, and by mutual assistance. We thank you all, spiritual benefactors, for all the blessings that we have given to us tonight, for the protection, the guidance, and the teachings. And we ask to close our meeting. So be it.